What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined every Monday and Wednesday by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk or subscribe anywhere you get your podcast today. Fully loaded show for you guys to start off another week, first week of July. We're already halfway through the year, which is bonkers. Vince Williams talking about a possible inside linebacker coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers. A former Steelers wide receiver goes off in the USFL championship game. Alejandro Villanueva, has some very interesting words on Mike Tomlin, and an all-pro safety who, well, talked a little bit of Pittsburgh Steelers on Barstool's Bussin' with the Boys. It is a cloudy morning here in the Berg, but it was a good weekend overall. You were at the Buccos game, watched a great comeback over the weekend, so I would imagine it was a good one. How you feeling,
That's right.
my friend?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I went to that Buccos game with, so I have one friend who's a Pirates fan, another friend who's a Pirates fan, and then three other friends who I don't think could care less about baseball. And even the people who don't care about baseball, I think, at the time of their lives. It was crazy. It was a great game, great comeback, and then Santana just rips that first pitch, and you weren't even ready for it. No one was even had built up oh, this could be a walk-off right here, but it just happened all in an instant. But yeah, it was a good weekend. I got the Buccos game in. I went to a museum. I got my sports. I got my culture. I was a Renaissance man this weekend. So
you were a Renaissance man. What museum? Natural History Museum?
Yeah, art and natural history. Yeah,
it's the best one.
Yeah. It's a good one.
It's the best one. I tell people all the time. I'm like, if you're coming to Pittsburgh, they're always like, give me off the wall things to do. I'm like, this is the most generic tourism thing you could do. It's the best thing you'll do all weekend. Is the Natural History Museum. Yeah,
it's great.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a good weekend. Sounds like a great weekend. I moved not one but two recliners into my
big man
grandfather-in-law's house this weekend. Yeah. So also good weekend. I'm still detoxing. I feel like I had one glass of wine with dinner over the weekend, and my whole weekend was like fried. I felt hammered immediately. The next 2 days, I was just like, I can't do anything. I have a slight headache. This is terrible. So I'm thinking this is the week that vacation goes away. Real life comes back in. Even waking up this morning, I was like, oh, we got to do the podcast, huh? It's Monday. It's not, I can't go have a pina colada. So we're still, we're working our way back. I will say, I think that before we dive into some football, I think the biggest thing that happened over the weekend that I think also kind of threw off my clock here is Twitter decided to take another step in the wrong direction say that you could only see 600 tweets in a weekend, which are in a day, which means that everybody is limiting themselves on Twitter. Did you have were you one of those people that were a little upset about that one?
Oh, I was very upset. Well, because just Twitter's how I get not all my news, but it's how I get most of my news. Yeah. And I don't even know how it actually works. The real thing that upsets me is, do you use TweetDeck at all?
Yes.
Yeah, I love TweetDeck, and even that, it was that actually had survived a lot of the weird changes that have gone on, but it's not surviving this one, which is really annoying me. I have to rethink how I don't know. Usually I just keep Twitter open on my laptop and I just kind of let it run, and if something pops up, I see it and I no, yeah, this is it is changing a lot. This is maybe not something I'm very proud to admit, but Twitter, kind of going to the wayside is really changing a lot of my life right now. It's really weird.
It's terrible, dude. It's terrible. And Jillian, my fiance, was calling me out for it all weekend. She's like, I'd be scrolling. She's like, just remember, you only got 600 tweets. And I'm like, you're right. I got to get off.
I don't even get it. Can I just, if I click on one, is that how, or if I just physically see? Because I definitely saw more than 600 tweets yesterday. I've probably seen 600 tweets this morning.
I have no idea. I just know that at some point you get the notification and it's all over. I will say that a lot of people were complaining, and I don't feel good about it. Watching Twitter dissolve in front of us it's rough, man. It's that's our life. For the last 5+ years, I've just been. I didn't need any other social media. I barely go on Instagram. I barely go on everything else. Twitter. And now I'm trying to come up with other ways and seeing myself spending more time outside. It's terrible. But the 600, I'm okay. I'm okay with having to limit myself and say, yeah, if this is it, if I got to stay off my phone for a little while, I'm cool. Cause we easily have to see the notifications alone that I get easily 400+ tweets a day, minimal. So, because it's the NFL, it's the NCAA, and it's the NHL. So it's my phone billion in notifications, and I look at every single one of them. So I got to be pretty close to that 600 in a day. It stinks, but
Right.
out of all the things, I think this one is okay. But genius move by Elon Musk. The guy's going to be a millionaire by the end of this because eventually we all will cave and get the blue check mark.
Oh,
Because
I don't know about that.
we'll be running out of tweets.
Blue
I don't want to do
man.
it.
I want that blue sky invite. I feel like that's what
What's
blue
the
sky.
blue sky?
It's just like I think it's like the same thing as Twitter, just like an alternative. But you have to get like invited or something by someone who's already on there. I don't know. It's weird. But
What am I trying to?
know.
Who am I trying to reach then? It feels like a party.
Like I don't know. They're like people like I saw a bunch of today, like a bunch of people I follow from like ESPN. I don't know. Like I saw a guy who used to work for ESPN switched over today. There are a bunch of other people who I don't know.
That's what I mean though. Like I'm not ESPN people aren't liking my tweets. They're not. People watching the show are liking my tweets. And if they're not on there, I don't want to be on there. I'm good.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough.
I think we should start our own. We'll come up with it. The All Steelers Talk social media app. That'll be good.
There we go.
It'd be a lot of people just totally hating on us. But it'd be
great as long as they're clicking it.
As long as they're on, that's all that matters. I feel you. All right, let's talk some Pittsburgh Steelers football. Vince Williams came out over the weekend after the USFL championship game, which the Pittsburgh Maulers did not win. Unfortunately, it was a rough game, but at the same time, like there were times where it felt competitive. It felt like it was worth watching. It was definitely worth watching. He says that the Steelers' next linebacker, the next player that they will sign is Reuben Foster, inside linebacker for the Pittsburgh Maulers. He had a pretty good year. He led a defense that finished first in the USFL, with 53 tackles and an interception. And then he had 7 tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss in the championship loss. Not a bad season. He's just under 30 years old. It's been a couple of years since he's been in the league. You think this is a guy that you consider if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers? You think this is a guy that should be on their radar now that the USFL season is over?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's someone you can consider. In some ways, I feel like he's a little redundant. Like, I just don't know what he brings that's different to the roster. But, I think the Steelers need some more depth at linebacker. You've got, you were saying before we got on, they have a million receivers and a million safeties and a million offensive linemen, but they're still a little thin relatively at linebacker. And even just for competition's sake, for, emergency's sake, like you probably need 1 or 2 more bodies in there just when you go into training camp and you're looking for guys to really fight and compete and find the best 53 you can.
Yeah, I agree. You look at it right now, the Steelers have 13 wide receivers, give or take 1 because of Anthony Miller. I don't remember if I came up that list before or after Anthony Miller's release. So 13-ish wide receivers, 7 offensive guards, 7 offensive tackles, 11 defensive backs. Just, there's ways to find 1 more roster spot. That's the biggest thing here is people are going to say, oh, well, you already have 6 inside linebackers. How many do you need? You typically bring 7 into training camp. They're already down like half of an inside linebacker because Cole Holcomb's going to be on a pitch count. So you're not going to see him as much as you'd see everybody else during training camp because of the foot surgery. So you're at 5.5 inside linebackers. You want competition for that 5th one. And right now you have 2 guys. Reuben Foster, I'm sorry. I think Chappelle Russell is a talented inside linebacker, but Reuben Foster adds more competition than he would to that position. Nick Kwiatkowski.
Yeah.
Kwiatkowski. Yeah. Somebody gave me the pronunciation in the comments earlier. I tried to get it down. Couldn't get it. I'm terrible with names, but he'll bring competition. He has starting experience, but again, he's 30 years old. So what are you looking for out of this guy? Just a normal special teamer. I just think that it makes a lot of sense. It's the only position in my head that makes sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now is inside linebacker. And to come up with a spot, I mean, they're going to change that 90-man roster 800 times during training camp. There's no need to go in there with all these guys that aren't going to, I mean, you can't even, all those offensive linemen aren't even going to get reps. They're not even going to come close to it because Kevin Dotson's going to take a huge chunk of reps. Nate Herbig's going to take a huge chunk of reps so that they compete for roster spots and positioning on the depth chart. Kendrick Green's going to take a ton of reps because he's going to be fighting for a roster spot and they're going to want to give him that opportunity. Just, there's not enough snaps for them to say, oh, put everybody in there. And inside linebacker, there's easily enough snaps and you could add another name, especially if it's one that looks good. I will say this. he doesn't fit the mold of what we've talked about the Pittsburgh Steelers need. He's not a defensive, he's not a coverage guy. He's a run stuffer. He's a go find the quarterback, a thumper type of guy. He's just a typical inside linebacker. But again, like, I don't know, like PFF named Rashaan Evans as like that other guy. And I think he's the same mold. So I think at this point, that might be all you're finding.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I absolutely agree. Like if they're looking for that kind of coverage linebacker, that guy better be on the roster already, because I don't think they're really going to find someone else that can fill that role for him. And maybe they're just comfortable with what they have and they don't think they need a guy like that. I don't know how confident I am in that, but they clearly haven't been, I don't know, targeting anyone new. That, Quan Alexander might have been a guy who could have done that, but
yeah,
they
he's
seem
still
like,
out there.
Right. So I don't know that. To me, that seems like that ship has kind of sailed already. Like if they wanted to sign him, they would have done it already, but they might just be comfortable with what they have and they might not think they need a player like that, which would be a little strange to me, but
yeah, but at the same time, that's like what we've said this for 2 years now. Me and you have talked about this for well over or almost a whole year at this point, that they need a coverage inside linebacker. Last year it was everybody and anybody, and they came into the season and they didn't have anybody or anybody. They went out and got Miles Jack, who was essentially just what Vince Williams was, just what Devin Bush was. Devin Bush was supposed to be that guy. He never turned into that guy. They used Robert Spillane as that guy. So it feels like we think one way, the Pittsburgh Steelers see it a different way, and it doesn't seem to work out in the Pittsburgh Steelers' favor. I will say that, it's tough. Like, it's in today's NFL, it's very hard to find an inside linebacker that's going to be physically capable, athletic enough, have those natural abilities to compete with, like Travis Kelce or George Kittle or, David Njoku or Mark Andrews, any of these guys. Because those tight ends are they're crazy these days. They're pretty much wide receivers, a lot of them are. So it's fine. It's hard to find that guy. It just seems that the Pittsburgh Steelers have like given up on it. They're just like, well, it's going to be tough. So we might as well just get guys that we feel real good about. And even if Cole Holcomb is that guy, like you don't want another one just in case. Because right now it's Tanner Muse, who doesn't play defense. It's, not ideal for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I will say that I still think that it's a possibility that they go out and they get this guy. I think it's a real possibility that they sign an inside linebacker as a whole. If it's Reuben Foster, I think that has a lot to do with whether or not they believe his off the field issues and his injury troubles and all that are behind him. But the connection's there.
I was going to ask about that too. Like these guys who played in the spring leagues, like is anyone, and especially for a guy like Reuben Foster who has injury concerns and is 29, going to be going on 30, like, is there any concern about, I don't know, his ability to hold up playing basically two full football seasons in in one calendar year? Like that seems iffy to me. And I don't think I've seen a ton of people talk about that.
I agree with that one. It's literally back to like you're essentially going, this is your rookie season again. Everybody talks about how hard that rookie season is because you essentially just don't stop all the way through. That's pretty much what's going on right now with any of these guys that come in from the USFL. And the fact that he's coming off, I don't want to say coming off, but he's got the ACL troubles. He's got the age at this point. It is definitely a concerning factor for the Steelers. I don't know if they look at that as like, I don't know, like what's Reuben Foster's like workload if he signs with the Steelers? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like just a couple of special team snaps a game. Like that's all you're looking at. He's not going to touch the field on defense unless he's better than Mark Robinson. But I think that'd be tough to beat out. Even if you're on that line, I think Mark Robinson gets the bump just because they'd like to develop him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I agree with you. I think that's definitely there. I think that will play a role. It's just a matter of if they're going to ignore it or not. But I think that goes with everybody. You know what I mean? Like outside of the quarterbacks, anybody who's going from the USFL or from the XFL to the NFL immediately, like you have had no wasted time. You've just gone football whole season. By the end of this year, you've played what, like
20 games, like
27 games.
Yeah. If you play every game, you're.
Yeah. And then Reuben Foster, 2 more on top of that one. So you're at 29, and that's before the NFL playoffs. That's ridiculous. Like that's the longest year of your life. And then you're going to take a year off. Like, and if you're one of those guys, like if you're a Reuben Foster and you're 30 years, like, you think one season playing special teams for the Pittsburgh Steelers isn't going to get you, like, you're going back to the USFL, most likely.
Yeah.
You're going to do this again. So you're not never playing football ever again. That is concerning. I've thought about that though. Like when I've seen when the USFL schedule like originally came out, my thought was that's way too late into the summer for for these guys to recover in 3 weeks and then return to training camp. It doesn't make a ton of sense, but I still think that the NFL is going to try, they're going to do their best to give these guys an opportunity. I don't know if the Pittsburgh Steelers will be one of those guys. Vince Williams believes that he will be. There's another name, Deion Kane, former Pittsburgh Steeler from 2019, played 8 games for the Steelers over the course of 2 seasons, had 3 touchdown passes for the Birmingham Stallions. Winners, went off, stole the show. Was cool to see that.
Yeah, he got MVP, I'm pretty sure. Game MVP.
Was he MVP? Was he the USFL?
So.
Good for him.
MVP for the championship game. Yeah.
Yeah. I know the quarterback was the one for the league, he was a baller. 3 touchdowns. I think it was like 171 yards because he had 101 kickoff yards as well.
Yeah.
You look at this guy, he's only 26 years old. The Pittsburgh Steelers are not going to sign him. He's not coming to Pittsburgh. You think this guy gets another opportunity? Like at what point do you look at a guy like that and say, you've been in the league for so many years now and it just didn't work, and now you're going to do this? Like, do you get another opportunity? Do you believe it'll translate this time, or do you just look at it and say, this is just a guy that it just doesn't work out like that?
Well, I think especially for receivers, there's always going to be someone who can argue, change of scenery, in our system, he could be really good. Like, this guy has some talent. I think also the special team stuff really helps him. Just someone who's kind of electric, I guess you could say, with the ball in his hands, like capable of making those explosive plays. I think that gives him a real leg up too. Like you said, it probably won't work for the Steelers. Like, it just doesn't make sense for the Steelers. But yeah, I absolutely think this guy gets a chance somewhere. I don't know. There are too many teams out there. There are too many roster spots for him to not get invited to training camp. And he's done too much to, I think, not earn that, to at least get another look.
So I think the craziest part about this is that I agree with you. I think you get that game alone gives him a look, no doubt. But he finished the regular season, with where's it at? 16 receptions for 182 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's what he finished the regular USFL season with. So you look at like the whole thing and you're like, this guy didn't really have a great year, and then balled out in that final game. And I agree with you. I think that's enough for teams to say, well, in big moments, this guy, he's good for something. Those 3 touchdown catches, by the way, were all very good, impressive catches. Not one of them. Like,
not one of them was single covered. Like, I think he was double covered on all of them, at least.
Toe tapped 2 of them. It was an impressive showing. 26 years old. Yes, I agree with you. I think at some point somebody's like, hey, we got to get this guy, just to give him an opportunity to come in here. I mean, like, dude, you look at his career, like his resume. When he came to Pittsburgh, it was impressive. He played with Deshaun Watson, and who was Deshaun Watson's big? What was it? No, it wasn't DeAndre Hopkins.
Mike Williams.
Mike Williams, thank you. At Clemson, went to Philadelphia, I believe. Had a couple of, like, he's got 15 games of experience. He's got 6 games of starting experience under his belt. Like, he's done this before. He's yet to catch a touchdown. I'll give you that one. But for those 2 years, he was only in the league for 3 years. He was drafted in the 6th round in 2018, played in 2019, and then played in 2020 for 2 games. And then that was it. So at this point, you're 3 years removed from the league. You're only 26 years old. And then you just had this performance. Like, I agree with you. I think somebody's just going to be like, the best thing you could do as a bad football player who's like on the verge is to take a break. And, people forget that maybe you didn't work out in the NFL, and then they give you that next opportunity, or like, maybe he's evolved, blah, 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 blah. Million reasons. I think that he could find himself somewhere. I hope he does. He was a cool dude. I remember that in 2019. He was a real nice guy. Not going to be Pittsburgh. Hope it's not somewhere in the AFC North, because the Steelers just don't, if he does turn out like that, that's the last thing you want to hear is the memes of Pittsburgh getting rid of him. It's like, it wasn't his fault, man. Duck Hodges was throwing this guy a football. It just, it doesn't count. But good for Deion Kane.
his year with the Steelers was real weird. Like, it wasn't
Oh,
ideal at all.
that season does not count, in the grand
Mhm.
scheme of the Pittsburgh Steelers and everything the Pittsburgh Steelers have ever done. And the 2019 season should just be eliminated. Like, it doesn't. At one point, the Pittsburgh Steelers walked out an offense with Duck Hodges. Jalen Samuels was their starting running back with Benny Snell Jr. as their backup running back. Deion Kane started at wide receiver with Juju was hurt for a little while, so I don't even remember who the other guy was out there. Nick Vannett was their starting tight end. No, yeah, like it was wild. That was my first year. That was my first year on the beat.
Was that the year Myles Garrett bonked?
Yep. That was the Myles
Yep.
Garrett, Mason Rudolph year. Yes, it was. That was after. That was later in the season. That was Duck has it went Mason took over. Mason got concussed, I believe. Duck went in. Duck took over. Duck gets benched. Mason goes in. Mason gets smacked in the head with a helmet. Duck goes back in.
Mason had been concussed earlier that year before he gets knocked over the head with a helmet.
That was the scariest year. Like, people want to make fun of Mason Rudolph. I'm not going to get into that right now, but that year for Mason Rudolph, his first concussion was not just a concussion. He was knocked out cold by Earl Thomas. Like, they had to take his helmet off on the field, carry him. Like, they picked him up. I remember, like, Zach Banner had one arm, somebody else had the other. Banner's crying as they're like walking him off the field. It was a vicious hit. And then later in the season, he gets smoked by Myles Garrett. Yeah, it was a rough year, man. Like, if you went to any doctor after that one, they'd probably tell you, all right, you should probably take a little bit of time off from this because this is getting dangerous. Like, wasn't Kenny Pickett's concussions. It was brutal concussions that year. Yeah. Rough year for Mason. And he got benched twice. No, once. And then in the Jets game. Oh, and then he finished off his year in the Jets game. He hurt his shoulder, broke his, I don't know if he broke his collarbone, but he did something to his collarbone. And that's how he ended it. And then Duck had to go back out there. It was
goddamn.
I know, dude. Rough year for Mason Rudolph, man. Rough year for Mason Rudolph. Terrible. All right, let's talk another throwback player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Alejandro Villanueva recently went on the Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce podcast, New Heights, talked about Mike Tomlin. What he had to say was very interesting. He had a lot of really good things to say about Mike Tomlin and the man that he is and the person that he is. But this one quote stuck out to me specifically. Mike Tomlin is one of a kind. I think sometimes I get a little pissed off when I see him because I know that he could have a much bigger role in society than being a head coach. He's got incredible leadership skills, incredible charisma. And then he obviously, went on to talk about like how he helps people, blah, 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 how good of a person Mike Tomlin is. We know all the things about Mike Tomlin. That quote really, because I'll tell you this. Villanueva was there for the first 2 years that I was on the beat, and I've never met somebody more intelligent in my life in an NFL locker room than Alejandro Villanueva. The dude would sit there, talk politics. If you had like a real good question, he would give you like a really, really well thought out, sophisticated answer. And you're just like, this guy knows way more than I have. He's obviously, decorated Army hero. The guy's, an icon. He's a dude. To say these things, I think it holds some ground. But for us, when you saw that, when you heard that, was your thought, maybe Mike Tomlin could change the world a little bit? Or are you thinking, okay, let's calm it down. He's a football coach. Let's not get crazy here.
Yeah. I kind of fell more on that side, on that later side of he's kind of a football coach. I mean, like, I'm just always wary about, like, you always see like the, t-shirts or whatever, where it's like, Andrew McCutcheon for president or something like that. It's like, I think Mike Tomlin's real smart. I don't disagree with anything that Villanueva said. I think Mike Tomlin's real smart. I think the leadership qualities are obvious. I get real wary about, like, saying whatever local celebrity or something, someone should run for office or something. Like, I don't know. Just seems like dangerous territory to me. And then I also don't think like Mike Tomlin would want to do that.
No chance.
Which is part of what, like, there's a popular theory that, like, the people best fit to run the world don't actually want to, like, they don't want that kind of power. And I think that's like, I think there's a little bit of that in Mike Tomlin where maybe he would be good at it. maybe he'd have good intentions and make good decisions, but I don't think he would ever I think he really likes his job now. I think that was kind of his calling, and he found it, and he was really good at it. And I can't imagine a scenario where he thought where first of all that Mike Tomlin would kind of have the ego to say, look, I can change the world. I can be, I can affect societal change like that.
Yeah.
And then also just like the desire to leave a job that he is very comfortable in and very stable with, and that he seems to like.
Yeah, doesn't have any. I mean, he's got no hair to lose, but doesn't have any gray hair over it. You know, I
Right.
agree. I will say this: I think that if Mike Tomlin was given, if you had to pick, knowing the people that I know, and somebody gave me a list and said it was like the NFL 100 list, and they said, name the top 10 people that you think could save the world from all the bad things happening in it. Mike Tomlin might be on that list. Like he might be on that. Just knowing what I know about Mike Tomlin as a leader, as a human, I've never once in my life outside of Le'Veon Bell for like 20 seconds and like random running backs from the Steelers in the past that just hate the world and I have this against Ben and Mike Tomlin. Besides those people, I've never, ever heard anybody say anything negative about either of them. All they talk about is how great, how much they'd run through a wall for Mike Tomlin, how consistent he is, how vocal, how perfect of a leader he is. I think I would consider possibly putting him in charge of fixing the world for like 10 seconds. Do I think that he would ever do it? No chance. No. Mike Tomlin would laugh in the face of that job in 2 seconds and say, are you crazy? I'm the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is what I want to do. I'm fine. I do not need to go run a country, run a world. That's the other. I don't think it could be a country. I think it would have to be he'd have to be dictator of the world,
right?
For this to actually work, And I think there's a good shot that maybe it does work because people by the end of it will just be like, you know what, man, I don't know what it is, but the way he talks got me. It got me. The bigger question, how many Tomlinisms, what Tomlinisms work? The standard is the standard can mean a million different things when you're trying to run the world. Yeah. But squirreling these nuts, that gets people going every single time,
We want volunteers, not hostages. That could get some legs.
That could go real negative real fast though.
Yeah,
that could
His first scandal, yeah.
Yeah, that could get a lot of people in trouble real quick. There's the Tomlinism. Imagine if Joe Biden, or whoever, whatever world leader you want to put out there, walks up to a podium and just starts. He's like, you know what? When we got red paint, we're gonna paint the barn red. And you're like, there it is. There it is. Yeah. I'm ready. The votes would be in that. There's the next question. If it was a vote, okay, Mike Tomlin, somebody put Mike Tomlin on the presidential ballot. Does he win?
In Pennsylvania for sure.
Easy.
I mean, I don't know. Among NFL coaches, I feel like Mike Tomlin's got to be up there as one of the.
Do you have another one?
Well, Andy Reid, I think, falls into the same boat. I think he could do a good job, but he definitely does not want to.
No chance. No chance. And Mike Tomlin might do it just because he feels obligated to do it. Andy Reid would. There's no chance he wouldn't even. He'd be like, "Are you? No, I'm good. Yeah. I'd rather retire."
Yeah.
Andy
I'm trying
Reid,
to think
Mike
of
Tomlin.
Who else would. I don't know.
That's tough.
Yeah. It is tough.
Bill's not doing it.
No, and Bill, I don't know if I'd want Bill.
Nah, Bill's not doing. Bill. He's not doing a good job on that one. It's
gonna get rough. People I don't know, Sean McVay or Pete Carroll, they'd be the most annoying politicians I think I've ever.
Sean Payton might be. He might get, then you got the whole bounty gate thing though.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want
that guy. You got to worry about if things are going to get real hostile real quick. That one could get bad. I think those are the only two. If we're really making a full list, it might just be Mike Tomlin and Andy Reid with maybe a backup of Bill Belichick just because people would fear him, I guess.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't even feel good about it, I'd be like, oh, man.
Pete Carroll, I could definitely see.
Pete Carroll, I could see maybe.
I don't think he'd be I don't think I would vote for Pete Carroll, but I think Pete Carroll would be. There are people who would vote for Pete Carroll.
Yeah, I could see Pete Carroll being up there too. That might be it though. That might be the whole list. It might be a very short. And I think that the first two, I think Mike Tomlin holds a very high, like it's a significant drop off even before Andy Reid. But after Andy Reid, I think that dip is like falling off the edge of a cliff. Is drastic.
Definitely.
Yeah, I can see it though. Mike Tomlin, he brings up Villanueva brings up a good point. I was glad that he brought it up. I was glad that it came out after all these years. Do you think that he's ever said that to Mike? You think he's ever been like, Coach,
Oh, no way.
why don't you just go run?
Think so.
You don't?
No, I don't know. Because Mike Tomlin would laugh in his face. Like, I don't think he knows that.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what made him a little more pissed off. Yeah, but I agree. Like, the fact that Villanueva, like, if, I don't know, if, like, I'm trying to think of some random Steelers player, like, if Vince Williams, like, said this or something,
Yeah.
like, it would definitely have less legs. It would carry less significance than Andre Villanueva, who, you know, has some worldly experience behind him.
Yeah. Like it literally served in this country and, you know, has done just like remarkable things at all times. And then, for him to, exactly. If like Ben came out and said it, you'd be like, okay, buddy, we got it. Thanks. You know? Yeah. Villanueva was the only one actually, like top tier. Rocky Byer, maybe, but even him, he's getting old enough where you're just like, okay, relax there, pops. Villanueva was a good one. All right, last thing I want to talk about here. Kevin Byard, Titans safety, went on Bussing with the Boys recently. Barstool Sports podcast talked about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Said that oddly enough, he grew up a Steelers fan and actually was a little pissed off at them during the draft process. He told Bussing with the Boys, I remember being at the Senior Bowl. The Steelers were one of the only teams that didn't meet with me. I was kind of hurt about it, and I love Mike Tomlin, obviously. I got a lot of respect for him, but at the same time, I knew they needed a safety. And then he went on to tell the story about how the Steelers, 6 picks before Byard was actually selected by the Titans, the Steelers drafted Sean Davis. Clearly didn't work out. We all know the story of Sean Davis, turned into Minkah Fitzpatrick after an injury. The rest is a sad story for Davis, a good story for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Still, Byard talked about the Steelers. This whole conversation started as they talked about, potential other teams that he could go to if he is released by the Titans, because the Titans want him to take a pay cut from his, I believe, $19 million cap hit this season. Named the Pittsburgh Steelers as like, hey, like I did grow up a Steelers fan, possibly. You look at that, you say, hey, that's, if you're holding on to that, maybe there's still a possibility here. Or you're still looking at it as like, okay, what are we doing? Why do we, Taylor Lewan's got to let go of the Pittsburgh Steelers stuff.
Yeah. Look, if he's not willing to take a pay cut for the Titans, I can't imagine why he'd be willing to take a pay cut for the Steelers, even if he grew up a fan. I think it'd be a really good fit, like football wise. Like obviously, I'll take the all pro safety. That's nice. But yeah, no, if I don't know if he wants $19 million or more. Steelers don't have $19 million to throw around.
No.
So yeah, it doesn't really make sense from a financial standpoint. It is kind of a bummer. Like you think about, there were a couple of Steelers teams like immediately after he got drafted that could have used a player of his caliber in the defensive backfield. Like he could have been. I want to say like a game changer. Like I don't know. There were some. So he was drafted in 2017 or 2018.
Yeah, I believe 2017.
Yeah. I mean, you just look through you can just like go through Sports Reference and look at like where the Steelers ranked in pass defense in 17 and 18, and those were good teams. Like those were like league leading offenses that were just, quite frankly, undone by really bad pass defenses. And having an all pro safety back there probably could have. I mean, they're at least playing in one more Super Bowl, probably.
Yeah.
If not having won one.
Yeah, it's a total game changer. Like that was like you look back at it, dude, and it was like the Artie Burns, Ross Cockrell years. And you're just like, what would those teams be if it wasn't Artie Burns, Sean Davis, and Ross Cockrell? If Morgan Burnett didn't have to give it a shot in Pittsburgh and see what happened. Mike Mitchell didn't have to give it a shot and see what happened. I think Mike Mitchell worked out just fine, I guess. But
he was like one of the best players in that secondary, and
he was the best player in that secondary. And he never played again after the Steelers, which shows you exactly. I guess he played a year with the Colts, but it's still like it was the end of Mike Mitchell, which shows you how bad that was. I agree. I think that changes everything. And on top of that, like, I mean, maybe maybe because you already have Terrell Edmonds, but maybe you don't draft Terrell Edmonds if you have Sean or if you have Kevin Byard and whoever you picked up afterwards. And maybe Minka Fitzpatrick still becomes a Pittsburgh Steeler. And then you're rocking the Minka Fitzpatrick, Kevin Byard in the safety position with, eventually Patrick Peterson and Joey Porter Jr. and Levi Wallace at corner. Like, imagine where they are right now. And don't get me wrong, I think Devontae KZ is a great safety. I think Keanu Neal is going to be very impressive this season. But I mean, it doesn't hold any ground to Minka Fitzpatrick and Kevin Byard, like what that could have been if they actually did draft him over Sean Davis, which I think, if anything, unfortunately just shows how bad Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert were at drafting defensive backs. Like they were. I've never seen a coach GM combo that has just missed so many times in the secondary and just continuously tried. Just like, maybe this guy. Nope, this guy stinks too. Like it was just miss after miss after miss. What could have been. As for him signing right now, I agree. The Steelers have like $13 million in cap space. They could obviously clear up a bunch more if they need to. But to go out and get a guy for a position that they already have filled with two guys, I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like at this point, we're talking about like, is Trey Norwood the odd man out? Which last year, like Trey Norwood was like a guaranteed spot. You didn't really know where he was going to be, but you were hoping he turned into something. Now you're talking about quality guys who might be on their way out of Pittsburgh because there's not enough depth at the position. There's just no need for, and I get it, Byard's an upgrade at all times, but you'd have to move Keanu Neal to like a full-time inside linebacker. He'd never play safety. Right. Devontae KZ would be that guy. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it really doesn't, which is kind of, it's kind of a shame. I mean, like, Byard, like, is going to, if the Titans don't want to pay him, someone's going to pay him.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know, he would be a really good fit. You would make an already, I think it's going to be an elite defense, like, even better. But, yeah, just you can't, I don't know. It doesn't seem worth the effort to try to clear the cap space for a guy who, for a position that you, like you said, you've already got filled, and I don't know, you've made your moves. Like,
yep. No need for it. Unfortunately, if they went out and did it, phenomenal move. Will they go out and do it? No. Unless he hits the open market and Omar Khan makes a phone call and he's like, "Hey, you want to sign here for like $7 million?" He's like, "Yeah, right. Sounds good." Okay.
So, yeah, that'd be quite a hometown discount. I guess he's not from Pittsburgh, right?
No, he's not even from Pittsburgh. He just grew up
Did he explain how he grew up a Steelers fan? Was it just
everybody grows up a Steelers fan? Just
yeah.
It's just what it is. If you don't grow up in Boston, okay,
well, like, I don't know. There are a bunch of people I know of who like not that I grew up with, but like people whose parents like weren't from Pittsburgh, but they grew up in the 70s watching football, and
yeah,
when the Steelers were awesome. Like, it was, so if they didn't have a team that they were already cemented with, they were just like, okay, I'll go with the team who wins a lot. And
yeah, the way I look at it is, if you were a defensive player, or if you were somebody who wanted to play defense in the NFL, if that was your dream, if you grew up in the early 2000s, which is when Byard grew up, or the 70s, you were a Pittsburgh Steelers fan because that was the defense. Like, you wanted to be Troy Polamalu, you wanted to be Ryan Clark, you wanted to be James Harrison. That's who you wanted to play for. Dick LeBeau. Like, that's who you just became a Steelers fan because of that. I think he did say that he admired Troy Polamalu, but like, everybody admires Troy Polamalu.
Right.
Nobody's like being a. You want to know who I hate, man? Troy Polamalu.
Yeah, that guy stunk. Like, who needs him? Yeah, it's just, it's also just interesting how the Steelers kind of carried a little more. Maybe it's because of how good they were in the 70s, but a little more like cultural power than like those. There were good Ravens defenses in the 70s. There were other, like the Patriots, I don't think, carried that kind of weight. I'm trying to think of who else was good around then.
In the 70s?
No, in like the 2000s.
Oh, the early 2000s. The Eagles were real good, but some people did, but even so, like, no, it was kind of like a Donovan McNabb TO thing. Like, if you weren't, you liked those guys, but you didn't like the Eagles. Yeah, I don't know. I will say that Ben said it a couple years ago when the Steelers beat the Cowboys in Dallas. He said that the Steelers are America's team. And I was like, ooh. But at the same time, like, somebody had to say it. Like, the Steelers, the Steelers are America's team.
Well, I don't know. Like, I think the America's team thing is kind of obnoxious from Dallas.
It's annoying.
So, like, yeah. I'm fine with anyone taking shots at that, but I don't know if there's an
I don't
America's
know.
team.
I don't want to say that they're like, like America. I don't think anybody should be America's team, but I think that they are. Like, if you were to add up the fan bases of all the teams, I think the Steelers have the largest one. And if they don't, whoever's first is going to shock me, and it's going to be neck and neck.
Oh, it'd probably be like Dallas or something.
Dallas would be up there. They would be the other one that I think would be like, it'd be a close 1-2.
But I think also if you like polled how many people, like who's the most hated team in the country, Dallas would also be up there.
Oh, and I think the Steelers would be very close as well. I think the
probably.
Steelers would be, it's what you like. But Dallas, don't get me wrong, Dallas is annoying. Like, even my buddies who are Dallas fans, I'm just like, okay, man, I don't care. They stink. Okay.
Yeah.
Dak Prescott isn't good. In a week, you'll think he's good, and then you'll think he's not good. It's the best. It's the same thing. Dallas fans, I will never compare them to Steelers fans. I'm not looking for the show to end or for everybody to hate me.
Oh, no, yeah. I don't
So we're
think
not, we're not doing that. But yeah, they're probably 1-2 most liked, most hated teams in America. And which is cool. Which is probably how Kevin Byard became a Steelers fan. Long story short, full circle.
Yep.
Here we go. And with that, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts and like this video. Find all of mine and Steven's work at allsteelers.com and all of our pick coverage at insidethepanthers.com. We will be back on Wednesday. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.